Alrighty, so you can see that I have my reference set up, right? We're doing some modeling, and I want to do. Oh my gosh, my cat's freaking out. He's a beast, uncontrollable. Sorry about that. Oh, you can actually see him in the reference too. He's plotting what he's about to do. But yeah, I'm gonna model this chair, right? And it's got some nice little details on it, nice extrusions. We got some cool techniques that we're gonna use for here, but it's a lot of just basic stuff. I just want you guys to go back over basic geometry, like modifying it, extruding, all that sort of stuff, right? So, without further ado, I'm using PureRef, by the way. PureRef, let's see. Yeah, there you can see how it's spelled right there. You can download it online. I find it's like a great little program for reference. See how it always stays on top? It's a fantastic tool for that. Alrighty, so let's get it in here. Let's talk about real quick. Let's go to Windows, Settings and Preferences. And you have settings. Right now, we're in centimeters, right? We're in centimeters right now. If you scale something up to say, let's do like a little test. Let's scale this up to 10, right? So that should be 10 centimeters. And then let's duplicate, Control D, and I'm gonna press W and move this again. And let's do like 100, right? So that's well, this is 1/10 of that. So let's look at our sizes, right? So we have centimeters right now. You can convert these to meters. And then look at that. You see this? So that 100 centimeters is now, if I put this at the 0.5 mark, it is completely one meter right there. See that? So that's nice to know. This is 10 centimeters. So let's work in centimeters for now, because this is like a smaller object. You can always convert later. But yeah, so 10 centimeters right there, right? We got 10 right on the mark. And that's important if you're trying to match the real world scale of something. I was measuring this chair, and it is about 97 centimeters tall. And then if I want to like just have a visual representation of that, what I can do is, since this is 97 centimeters in length, I can hold D and V, and I can snap the pivot point back to the base of it. And I'm just going to rotate with E, and I'm going to rotate it directly upward. But remember, you can type in 90 right here to get a perfectly straight up representation of that. So that's how tall the chair is in centimeters. And then the seat of it starts at about 41.5, right? So that's 41.5 centimeters now. And let's go in, and I'm just going to hold D and V. I'm going to snap that. Let's get this right there. So that's where the seat starts on that chair. And then it is also, that seat is about 44 centimeters in length. So I'm just getting that. I'm holding J to do that snap rotation that you're seeing, by the way. And then I'm going to put that right there. Let's put it, yeah. So that's about, those are like the basic dimensions of the chair. It is also 43-ish wide. You'll see that the seat changes dramatically in shape and form right there. All right, see that? It has a lot of like nice easing and flowing to it, so I think it'll be a good little project for us, right? And then I'm just gonna eyeball the rest for now. Like you could be more specific. It also helps when you're gathering reference. Take a picture from like the complete side of the object. You want to go from the complete side so you can see like the very thickness of this. But I'm just gonna eyeball it for now. But I suggest that on at home you guys do differently, right? So I'm going to snap this. I'm going to hold D and X to snap that at the very center of the scene. I'm also going to go pop open my modeling toolkit, right? I'm also going to zoom out, and let's get my reference over in a spot that's like a little bit less intrusive, right? But yeah, And I'm going to turn off symmetry because right now I'm going to multi-cut in a line, right? And if I hold control while I have multi-cut enabled, as I go over edges, it's going to highlight where it's going to make that cut. I'm going to middle click and it's going to snap perfectly to the center of that. Boom, you see that? So now if I go into vertex mode and I turn on object X, it should be world X. Oh, sorry, I'm working in the wrong direction here. Let's go in and with this base, I'm just gonna actually get a cube in here and basically start fresh because I have a lot of weird transforms on this. You see that can mess with our settings, right? So so here we go. Let's expand this out to sort of meet the size of that. Let's also give it some thickness because that chair has a sturdy bottom right there. Also, if you want, you can also change just the amount of subdivisions in this menu in here, if that so pleases you. And then our symmetry is going to be working nicely with object X, and boom. So now you can just start blocking out the shape, right? I'm going to do some multi-cutting. Remember, you're going to need geometry to make stuff like this curve. You see that? See how there's a slight curve towards the front? You're gonna need geometry to do that, right? So add in some multi-cuts. This shape is actually, it's not too basic. Basically, the most difficult part is gonna be this piece right there. That little hole in there. And there are some different techniques. Basically, in modeling, you're gonna see that there's a wide world out there of modeling techniques. But I'm just going to be using some basic ones. If that were a more detailed sort of pattern, I would probably use a Boolean operation, which uses one mesh to cut through to another. Unfortunately, I hate to cast some shade, but Maya's Boolean operations are pretty dog water. I'm not going to lie. They're pretty bad. Pretty error prone. So if you're going to use Booleans for something, I suggest Blender. Just do a quick Googling of Blender. If you already know Maya, Blender shouldn't be too hard to get into. Of course, the UIs are dramatically different, but some of the tools are just so much better in Blender that I suggest it. So right now, I'm just basically outlining the shape of this. I'm using my existing cuts. I don't need to do a bunch. You can always smooth later. I like to work relatively low poly for as long as we can. That's our goal. We start low, we keep it there as long as we can until we need some extra detail, and then we start to add some more. Like here, I want a little bit of a softer edge on this, right? And let's get that going right there. And here we go. So there we go. That is our seat right there. If I wanted to kind of justify these towards one direction, I could do that. I'm going to actually make them a little bit smoother, though, on the front side. Sort of match a little bit of that curve, because I think that seat has some slight indentation on it. All right. So that's the seat. Eventually, this is going to sort of curve up like this. But if we want to finish this right now, and I might as well, you know, we're already here. I'm going to use this. I'm going to pull that down to get a little bit more thickness. Also, I'm going to turn off symmetry so I get my pivot point right in the center. I'm going to squeeze in a little bit because there's a small amount of tapering towards the top and the bottom. I really want you guys to model something that you can look at on the fly and that you can take pictures of, because it's just going to make the process a lot easier. I'm also noticing that we have some slight, like where you sit down in this chair, they have some slight tapering in on that. So I'm just gonna move that down like that. See that? Just get a little bit in there, right? And let's also, now that this is moving the surface, I kind of want to get this to be a little bit smoother of a curve, right? There we go. See that? And then I messed up my symmetry a little bit right there, so I can always go to Mesh and Mirror. And you're going to see, oh, let's turn off soft select. We don't want soft select on at all. Let's do Mesh Mirror. Not that I know if that does anything for mirroring, but we're going to use X-axis. And then see how it's trying to go over there? Don't do that. And instead of axis position, use, you could use either object or world in this case. And yeah, so now we get a nice symmetrical piece right there. And then let's go in and merge border. You have to be careful with the mirror tool. Sometimes it can merge verts that you don't want to, but our verts are nice and widely spaced apart, so it should be fine here. I'm gonna go into vertex, boom. Let's take that. Oh, let's also re-enable object X symmetry. And usually whenever I do a mirror, I just do an edit, delete all by type history. Don't do that if you have a rigged character in your scene, as it will destroy the deformer that is using the skinning weights. So don't do that in a scene with a rig. Let's also push this down a little bit, because there's a little bit of depression right there in the chair. All right, and then I always, whenever I do like a mirror operation like that, I turn off symmetry and I make sure that everything welded up in the center. You can check that by just moving those verts, like in face mode. I'm just holding right click, going into face mode, left click, dragging, selecting everything, and then I'm moving around. If you have some really close together verts there, sometimes you'll see like ones staying behind when you move that, like they'd still be down here. That's how you can always see them. If you do get some like that, whoops, let's go back into vertex mode. I just drag through whatever, and I'm gonna shift right click. I'm holding shift and right click right now, and I go to merge verts, and I do this button, merge vertices, and that'll compress everything. You won't have any duplicate verts that way. Alrighty, so next up, I'm gonna double click this edge, double click this edge, double click this edge. I'm holding shift while I'm doing that, so it adds it to the selection, and then I'm going to double click, double click, double click, double click, and then I'm gonna hold shift right click, and I'm gonna go to bevel edge, boom, and here I can, because you notice like in all of my pictures I have that really slight shininess right there. I'm going to hold control so I get minute control over this value. Otherwise it's like way too much. If you hold control and shift, you get even more minute control. So I'm gonna make that nice and slender right there. Boom, that's exactly what we're looking for. And then I'm gonna press 3. So 3 enables smooth preview, and you can see what that seat's gonna look like if you add more subdivisions to it. And I'm pleased with that. That's looking good to me. I'm liking that. So this would, just for reference, if you know more about the pipeline, this would be our high poly, right? I would convert that to polys at some point, maybe do some sculpting on it in ZBrush, and then I have my low poly and my high poly, and then I can bake that detail between them, right? Also another detail, see these hard edges right there? I don't like that. It's visually unpleasing when I'm looking at that low poly. Let's go to mesh display, or you can hold shift right click and soften edge. I really recommend getting used to shift right click when you have things selected, because it really speeds up the process. And then now we can place this into a position, right? So we modeled it very vertically, right? We're doing some box modeling subdiv. We're adding subdivisions to that. And now we can place it in a location, right? Now, you also might want to just, if you want to modify that, you might just want to duplicate this and then move it off to the side. What you can also do is make a proxy of this with a, I believe it's like one of the special duplicates, duplicate special. And it'll be, I believe, an instance, and then whatever changes you make to this, it makes to the one that's in place. But I'm happy with where this is, and I'm going to slightly rotate it up. I'm noticing that on this chair there's a slight angling up that's happening, something like that. Let's do that, just so it's nice and will support whoever is in it. Let's also scale it to the bounding box that I have set up. There we go. And just an overall detail that I'm noticing, I don't have enough scale up here. This needs to be a little bit wider. This needs to be a bit more gradual. Let's go into symmetry, object X, and let's use object orientation. Very nice. It's going to take into account that different rotation that we added. If you were in world axis, you'd have to redo that. My cat's trying to sit in my chair as I'm sitting in it, so let's give him some room. There we go. Let's also add a multi-cut, right? I'm gonna get one more in here, and we're going to move this out. And I'm gonna use a little bit of soft select. There we go. Alrighty, so I'm happy with that. And then let's move on to a different piece, right? So let's start getting this back piece in there, right? It inserts, I'm seeing, into the chair right there. Let's see. Yeah, that's just gonna be cylinders. There we go. So there's a few ways that we can make this. Like, you could extrude a box along a curve for that. I'm gonna kind of model this in a sort of planar fashion, and then just put it on top of it later. So let's get I want a nice little curve right there, right? So we have this create poly primitives menu for a reason. Let's do the pipe. Pipe's gonna be great for this. And let's expand it. I hate this radius selector, and since it's in centimeters, it's always like annoying, you know? But yeah, we're gonna be messing with this. Let's do like, let's see, if this was 44, I'm gonna do like 22. Like, I hope this corresponds to that. Nice, very cool. And then let's do a higher amount of subdivisions. Whenever I'm changing any attribute in here, usually I'll just left click the word and then expand the amount. Let's do like 40 so we get a nice clean curve up at top. And then let's do thickness. Let's add a little bit, right? I'm just visually looking at that picture, and I feel like that's a good amount. All right. So next up is I want to, let's see. Wait a minute. This should be symmetrical on all sides. So now I want to go in and let's start messing around with this. I'll just duplicate this with Control D so I have a copy, and then let's move it let's move back to the center, and then let's get it rotated into a correct position. So I'm noticing that this leans back, right? It leans back past the silhouette of the one problem with duplicating those is that you lose access to the these little inputs. And I want some more thickness on this. Let's do like 2.6. Let's just do like 2.2. How's that look? And then let's do height. Let's also match that. Actually, this is looking a little bit different in terms of value. Let's try to just visually match it then, right? Something like that. Something like that. It's looking a little bit thick. Sorry, let's scale this back. And then thickness, let's get that. Again, I'm holding Control and Shift, so it's doing it at a very small amount. And let's add on a little bit here. All right, so there we go. Actually, I'm noticing a little bit more height than... No, there you go. So let's duplicate that. Let's try that out. Let's try that on for size. And I used X to snap it back to the grid so I didn't have to type in 0 there. And let's just get that silhouette kind of blocked out. I'm just matching that top to that right there. We also... we're gonna scale it out because I'm noticing it breaks the silhouette on the left and right a little bit past that initial bump down there. So let's do like this. There we go. And then let's go into face mode. And then, boom, I'm going to delete those. And then let's go in and extrude these. Hopefully we can just push that down, push that up, and then let's make sure that, nice, it's keeping that nice local translation, or that local rotation value in there. And then these are hooking up about right there. Let's give ourselves a little bit less. And then let's push this down in world space. So see how I held W and left click and I went to world. And I'm pushing that down. Animators are going to be using that all the time as well. And then, boom, there we go. So now let's go back into vertex mode. Let's go into object. Let's just push that up, right? So that's going to be that main frame right there. I think it might need to be a little bit further back. Let's do a little bit further back. And then rotate down like this. There we go. All right, so now we have this. Let's fix that protruding through the bottom there. So I'm satisfied with that. We do have a little bit of work to do at the bottom of this, but we'll fix that later. I might not go through the entire thing of this because I'm just going to kind of do the main parts, and then I might just call it real fast for this bottom stuff. I don't know. I am like a little bit of a detailed oriented person, so I don't know if that my OCD might just force me to finish the whole thing. But let's move this over to the side, and then let's get this guy. This is going to be the vertical one, right? So let's get the size in there. Right, and I'm gonna model this a little bit in. We need to get the. Yeah, let's rotate this up, and then okay, so let's zero that out. I'm gonna hold D and V to snap to the bottom here, and then I'm gonna snap that to, or I'm just gonna move that towards like the inside here. Then I'm going to rotate this. And then snap it in right there. And there we go. And then let's expand this a little bit, right? Let's expand this. It gets really tiny towards the bottom. Or not really tiny, but it gets much more expanded towards the top. And then let's start multi-cutting this up, right? Let's do a line of symmetry down the center, and then I'm gonna turn back on symmetry, and then let's just get the basic shape, right? So this might look like madness for a little bit, and then it'll make a lot more sense. So this detail starts basically at the halfway point. Actually, let's just mark that for ourselves visually. I'm gonna hold Control while I'm in multi-cut mode, and I'm going to middle click right there. Boom, there we go. So that's like the halfway point. It's like a little bit below halfway though. So let's use this to sort of mark our position for this detail right there, right? I'm trying to map out like where that is, and I'm not measuring with like a ruler or anything. I'm just doing this like mentally, and then this little bevel in here is about like a little bit above halfway between this point and the top point. This is also why I'd recommend something that you can look at. All right, and then let's move that down there. And then, let's see, for this bottom detail, it's kind of like right below that, and then it cuts the rest up into thirds, basically, for each of these details. Alrighty. So, if this is the bottom of that, boom, let's expand this. And then we can start taking these pieces. Let me get a drink real quick, 1 second. Alrighty. And let's do some verts, and let's start just pushing on them, right? Let's get that. Let's push this inward. Let's multi-cut this. Let's get that beveled out sort of shape right here. Boop, boop, right there. Let's move that out. Let's move this in. Let's move this out. And then let's move this out as well. Kind of make a nice gentle sort of shape right there. Notice that I'm doing all this in object mode. If I was not in object mode, and if I'm using this inside thing, I'm gonna be fucking up that profile. Look at that. Like immediately, it's just not clean, right? So be very cognizant of where you're, like how you're using your axes, right? So if you're watching this and you're like, why are Mike's shapes like cleaner in that perspective than mine? You know, like that's why. That is why. So let's do this. Let's move this down. Let's make it a little bit more harsh right there. And then, boom, so that's looking good. And let's get the top blocked out now. So we have this shape to here. So this is gonna be like that bulb, right? That's the bulb shape. Let's do this. Let's get it right there, and then move that. And then we're gonna be multi-cutting, boom, bang, right there. Let's get that little bevel included right there. And then this should be like the outside of this last shape. I'm noticing that this breaks the profile more than anything else. That might actually be due to the perspective of the camera, because I'm realizing that in reality it's pretty justified to this. It might be just a smidgen more outward. But yeah, there we go. And then we have a nice little representation of this. And now we're free to sort of, we're free to sort of start using more of our tools, right? I'm just gonna be using a lot of multi-cut. Guys, to be honest, it's kind of rare that I go in and start like carving up the surface like this, like one click at a time with multi-cut, because usually I'm edge loop oriented, right? I want you guys to be thinking about your topology. I want you guys to be thinking about like when you make a cut, like by using control, it automatically resolves, but sometimes it can add a lot of geo that you don't need and can be kind of cumbersome, right? So you want to be careful where you add it, but it is a super powerful tool. Unfortunately, I don't think we're gonna be doing a lot of extruding on this, but just remember that you can make shapes like pop out of the surface by using extrude. It's also under Control E. You can push these out, right? So we haven't done much of that, but make sure that you use extrude in your stuff somewhere. I also want you guys to remember that if you like end up deleting a section, remember you can always delete faces, you can delete edges. Verts are harder to delete, and sometimes you just have to go in face mode and blast something out. So if you want to fix something like this that has like the same amount of edge loops on both sides, you can always bridge together. And there you go, right? So that's just going over those again. If you mess up and you include points that you don't need, you can always target weld those back together. But yeah, so basically I want you to become reacquainted with these, your bridges, your bevels, your extrudes. But yeah, so those are the main points right there. Let's get back to this. And let's get our let's get our shapes here. I want this to start to curve inward. Right there. And I feel like that's looking pretty good. Alrighty, so let's do one last thing. Let's get this. I'm actually going to just double click this, and you can bevel this too. Like, let's get 2 segments in there. Let's push that inward, so it's just gonna make that nice curve for us, right? I want that nice curve right there. And bevel's gonna do that nicely for us. We can do it up here as well. If you want like a more smooth transition there, and there you go, right? So that's a very, very useful tool. You could do it on any of these as well. Like, these are both gonna have similar bevels to them. And there we go. Whoops, not depth. There we go. Very cool. And there's like some nice little like waviness in there. Capture that if you feel like it. I'm just gonna make sure that these are all nice and curvy for the time being. That looks great for that. This gets a little bit wider than this piece, so I'm noticing I can bring these in a little bit. I can bring these down a little bit. Let's just push this down. And there we go. All right, so now let's get this detail in there. That's gonna be the hardest part of this. And this is what I'm gonna use that tool, right? The multi-cut, and I'm gonna be cutting along this. I'm gonna basically cut that shape out and then resolve the topology results from that, right? Now remember, I said that you could do this in Blender. I'd really recommend checking out Blender at your leisure to see if you can do a Boolean operation. Maya does have Booleans, but I've never had any results nearly as clean as Blender's, right? When I'm using their tools, right? So maybe that says something about the state of Maya. We'll see. But yeah, so without further ado, I'm just gonna cut this in here, right? Boom. There we go. And then I'm gonna use this cut. I probably could have made it a bit thicker, but that's fine. And then let's move this, or let's cut up this surface right here. And then where does this terminate in the grand scheme of things? This seems to terminate before the outmost point, like probably around here. So I'm going to create a cut right here and then cut towards the center. And oops, what do we got here? We got n-gons, right? So for a high poly, n-gons aren't awful to have on flat surfaces like this, right? That's fine. This is not a high poly though. This would be our functional low poly that would be using in a game engine, or, you know, subdividing at render time to put a displacement map on, whatever, right? So this needs to have some clean geometry. So what we need to do is resolve these, right? I have an n-gon right here. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. Big no-no. We don't want to do that. That can cause problems. It doesn't cause as many problems in Maya, I've noticed, but it causes problems in other programs. But yeah, since this is a flat surface, though, we can get away with some nice little triangles. But there is probably a way to resolve this with quads. Like we could just fix these ones. Let's cut in the halfway point for this. And then, boom, right there. Let's see. Boop. Boop. And then, so now we have that resolved. This is now an n-gon, though, and we need to fix that up. But I want to have that. I'm bumping up the poly count a little bit right there so we can get these next cuts. I want to get all these cuts first, and then we'll resolve the result of them, right? So let's do up here. Notice that with symmetry on, multi-cut really doesn't like cutting across that line of symmetry, right? So I usually just do a default cut right here, you know, just to get things started. get Maya to be like, oh, okay, so we're going to make a new shape right here, right? And there we go. That might be a bit too high up, but that's fine. That's fine. What we're going to do is move this shape down. Scale inward. Actually, we're going to turn off symmetry for that so I can get my pivot point right in the middle of that. And then let's move that down. Let's see. Midpoint, that's almost right. Might need to go a little bit lower. And then let's scale that even more. There we go. All right, that's looking pretty good. And then let's get this represented. So let's turn on Object X again. So this terminates like about here, out here somewhere. And I'm gonna use, let's see, we might have to do some fixing up of this. So let's move this over here, and then boom, let's move this down. And then let's get a nice round bottom to that. Again, this is definitely something that I would use a Boolean for, but I'm showing you with the tools that we have in the classroom. Plus, Booleans do make some bad geometry sometimes, actually frequently. Let's also get this like little placeholder guy out of here. Don't need that anymore. But yeah. They make some bad geometry sometimes. I want to make sure that we get some clean geo that we can use. And let's resolve some of these edge loops, right? So I want to maintain like quads. I want to have this making sense to us. Here we go. We could resolve this up here and save our poly count. I might end up doing that. Yeah, I think I'll do that. Yeah, sure. There we go. And then we can also, this edge needs like a little bit more smoothness in my opinion. So I'm going to do that right there. And just kind of cut to that edge, move that out. And yeah, for the modelers in the class, I really recommend continuing your work even when you're not in class, because dude, there's a lot to learn, you know. I'm gonna terminate some of these edges since this is low poly. We'll see if this divides nicely, but I just want to get these edges resolved so I can kind of start to see the geometry. Sorry, I'm thinking. Let's just put it right there. Nah, it needs to go. Let's put this down right there. And then we need to do one across as well. So that's all resolved now. And then we can start cutting out our shapes, right? Actually, this is kind of, this shape isn't as appealing. I want this to get nice and round in there, right? I want that to be nice and round. And then this, we can add a, let's add one. Let's add one right there. And then let's also multi-cut right here. Boom, get a little triangle so we can kind of push that out. And I know you guys are probably being like, Mike, you told us not to use triangles. Well, on anything that's not going to be animated, quads aren't nearly as important. It's more about just if the high poly looks good and if it bakes down, right? If you're not going to be deforming that surface. All right, so let's start cutting this up. Boom. Boom. And then let's see, this might, we could simplify that geometry a little bit, but I want to see how this looks. I'm going to use tab and just kind of paint select to increase that, to make that a little bit faster. And then let's do this. I'm going to delete that backside. Just so you guys can see that again, you can select stuff really fast by left clicking and then double left clicking to the side of it, and see how it just grabs that entire loop right there. Same thing for, excuse me, music. I am watching, sorry. And then edge right here, you can do the same thing. You can also do just like portions. So if you select your starting point and your end point and double click, boom. See how it got everything in between? Very useful, very useful. I really recommend it. Man, this tutorial is going on a little bit long for what I was hoping for though. But there's a lot of good useful information in here. And then I'm going to extrude this, Control E. And let's push this back. And you'll notice my entire model is now like this weird, like dark black sort of color, right? That's because of the normals, right? Our normals are our shading data for these objects, right? And this is telling it to be nice and uniform, you know, across the surface. It's going smooth on us. Same with this, except for these edges. Those are still hard normals. Our normals right here are reversed. That's what the black is telling us. So we can go to Mesh Display, then Reverse, and then there we go. We're back to normal. And there we go. So what we can do is also Mesh Display Soften Edge. You'll notice that we're getting some ugly artifacting there. So we want to limit that. We might be setting those faces to hard normals to fix that, or beveling this edge as well, because I do want a nice bevel on both these pieces. I'm selecting all this outer geometry. I have an N-gon there that I'm not too fond of. But yeah, and then let's get this. There we go. Make sure you select all of it. And then we have the bottom as well. I'm going to delete these faces, though, eventually, because we don't need them. Let's see. Did we get everything? Let's check the back. We did not get everything on the back. Very tragic of us. There we go. And then now we can do bevel. Let's do a small fraction, because this one has very small amount of bevel. And in our low poly, we might remove that bevel entirely. So I might duplicate that object and make a nice low poly one. So now let's press 3 on this and look at that. Hoo hoo hoo, baby. Look at that. All right, so now, I'm noticing, yeah, we have some N-gon stuff going on there. Let's terminate these edges real fast and quick. Boom. Boom. There we go. Alrighty, so we have that. Now, I'm just going to finish the rest of the chair real quick because I don't want to spend a bunch of time on this tutorial and overload you guys. I'm going to double click each of these and bevel these as well. Let's do bevel. Let's do a small fraction. And then let's also notice how they come to nice little cylinders at the bottom. What we can do is select. Let's go into face mode. I'm going to grab everything on the bottom there, and I'm going to control drag over that. And then, okay, so I was just making sure that there's no faces inside that. That's going to be wasted space. Let's do the same for this. So I'm going to drag select over this. Then I'm going to control drag select so it gets all that bottom stuff. I'm going to delete that. Boom. Don't need that. Don't need that in there, right? I'm going to do the same for the top. All right, and then let's go in to this little group of verts down here. And I'm going to hold shift and right click, and you can circularize these. And that's going to make it a nice perfect circle for us. And I find that this is just, it's a really useful tool for when you're making circle insertions into your objects here, you know. And then, so let's go 5. Let's see what that looks shaded. Let's soften those normals. And yeah, you can see how similar that looks. Might need to fiddle around with the poly count there. We could add some extra loops and play with the shading on that, but I think that's looking pretty good. And then let's get just some basic cylinders in for the for the struts in the back of the chair. And let's change our poly count on this. We don't need it to be that high. Let's just do 16. We are working at like a pretty detailed level, so I'm down for 16. And then let's go to our snapping. I'm going to hold D and V and snap it to the bottom of that object right there. And then let's just position this right here. And I'm going to scale that down to like the proper length. And then let's just get this to be connecting up at the top. And then let's move this. Let's move this. Oh man, that's getting hard to nail down properly. Sometimes you have to pull your rotator out so you can get more like finely tuned rotating. That's looking good to me. And then let's go in and I'm going to multi-cut. And let's get like the bottom part right here and then this part. Let's expand this out a little bit. And let's turn off symmetry. Symmetry has no place right here. And let's just expand out with these two axes. I want it to just be thicker right there. Now I'm going to duplicate. And I'm going to move on the world axis, because I don't want to mess with like the positioning or anything that much. Looks like we're going to have to anyways, so it's tragic. But yeah, and then let's push that right here. That's probably far enough over. Yeah. And then let's make sure our rotation matches up with the, whoops. Let's rotate that into that right there. And then I'm going to go back in. Remember, I switched to world, right? I rotated this object, so I want to be working in object space. Look at that manipulator. Be mindful of that, guys. That's useful for animators as well. Like, you're going to have to... Ooh, these actually are kind of splaying out a little bit more, I'm realizing. They're kind of... Let's put this in object mode as well. They're kind of getting more evenly spaced. Ah, I see. All right. You might just be able to rotate, scale that with R to get that into the right position. And then let's get this rotation. Very cool, right? So now I want these two to be on this side as well, right? Easy fix. I'm going to select both of those, right? And I'm going to duplicate them and move them over. However, it won't be perfectly mirrored because they're in their own sort of transform. Each of those has their own transform and stuff. So what we're going to do is I'm going to duplicate, right? Those have now been duplicated. I'm going to press Control G. That's going to group it, and it puts that group at the center. What we can do is just scale it on -X. Oh, you see that? Perfect. All right, so now we don't need this. And then we just need to make the bottom. So turns out, guys, I am gonna make this whole thing. I lied, because the rest of it's pretty dang easy. Let's go in and I'm gonna hold D and V. I'm gonna snap to the bottom. Remember, D changes your pivot point, V snaps, right? So we want to snap that to the very bottom of this. I'm gonna scale this up. I just need it to be the length of that distance to the chair. And then I can worry about all this nice little detailing that we're doing on it. Let's go into Modeling Toolkit. And I'm seeing like about the halfway point is when that initial bevel stops. Let's get that in there. And then I'm going to, again, I don't have any symmetry enabled for this. Music's picking up. We're going wild. Very cool. Very cool. And then let's get this to be like a sharper bevel in. And then for like a low poly, I'd probably just go straight over this with like 1, 2 spans. But if I wanted to make like the high poly detailed version, then I would have to add some more edges in here. You know what I'm saying? Like this. Let's get this moved in. You could even go into face mode, bevel this out, add an offset on it. I'm going to hold Control and Shift to get more control over my values, and then do like this. See that? Boom. You can do... The whole world's your oyster. This is why I love 3D. You can just start making stuff and have it look sick. So I'm just going to go real quick over this. Boom. And then the rest of this curve ends up probably around here. And then it dips in before it expands out again. And then, because this was all done with a like lathe, you know, right? And that means that it's gonna be nice and cylindrical all around. There we go. And then, you know what? Let's just bevel that, you know? Let's get it a little bit smoother. Let's add some segments. Boom. Look at... Man, you guys saying 3D's not cool? Like, you're just lying to yourselves, dude. You're just lying to yourselves. Let's expand this out. And then... let's do... this. And... I'm not gonna go all the way, but like let's just get it most of the way, you know. Boom. Right there. Let's hit it with another bevel. 2 segments. Boom. Simple right there. Right? And yeah, so like if we want to just cheat the shading on there real quick, again, this is like I would go in and make, like, I would duplicate this at some point and then add this like fine detail. But if I wanted to fake it, I'm just gonna go to soften, harden edges. Boom, I'm gonna harden that edge. I'm gonna harden this edge as well. And press G to repeat that harden edge tool. There you go. So that's one leg. I feel like this needs to just across the board be a little bit thicker. And then now we need to start placing it, right? So these are kind of rotated in this direction and this direction, right? Kind of at a diagonal. And then they hook up, maybe not as exaggerated in this direction. And there we go. So that's one. I'm just looking at it for right now. And then I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to press... I'm going to go forward. So I'm going to go forward in world so it stays nice and aligned, right? If I didn't do that, if I was still in object, it would just be syncing away. Don't want that. Let's do world. Move this. And then we can rotate in world, right? Because I want to keep that the same slant to it, but I can just rotate that back like that, right? There we go. So now that's looking good. That's hooking up where it should be. And then let's Control D. So those are now duplicated. I can move those around. But I'm going to Control G. Hit them with that same negative -1 on X. Right there. And then last up is that final cylinder. I might as well just take it all the way. Let's do this. I'm going to rotate it with J, so it's going to snap rotate like that. And then let's get this also snap rotated this direction. And boom, let's put this dead center. Looks like they have, it's a little bit more spindly, so I'm going to make that thinner with this little manipulator out there to pull the red and the blue axes. And then let's scale it up so it hits that size. And then let's add some multi-cuts. Boom, right there. Let's do, let's modify freeze transforms, right? Because I have a bunch of transform data on there. Let's modify freeze transforms. It gets it out of there. And then let's use our modeling toolkit. Let's turn on some symmetry. World X should work for us. And I'm going to use that to sort of make those expanded pieces. So let's grow that selection. Let's grow this. Let's multi-cut right here. I'm gonna expand that. And then let's move this in. Let's move this in. And then let's bevel both of those, you know, make a nice smooth transition right there. Perfect. Perfect. Let's get this. Let's get this. Let's bevel that right there. I'm gonna get it real small because it like kind of grows outward. See that? So it's real small on both sides of that, and then this is going to, these are going to scale in like this a little bit, right there. And then let's push those out. And then let's grow this a little bit. Bevel it. Segments too. Boom. And then there we go. That's looking great. Could be a little bit more stark on both sides of this, so let's scale these like that. And then finally, my friends, we've got the last piece. Let's do J to rotate that 90 degrees. And then that just sits right in there. And then, guys, you know the last trick. Control D, Control G, -1. And that's why it pays off to be modeling with your axes sort of aligned. And we got a nice chair. Whew, look at that. Look at that. That's actually turning out pretty well. Pretty good stuff, y'all. I'm satisfied. I'm satisfied. We did it. All right, so that's just me modeling a prop using all those extrudes. I didn't use as much extrude as I'd like, but that's just due to the nature of the prop. And we used a lot of bevel, a lot of just manipulating, scaling, multi-cut, definitely a lot of multi-cut, just with inserting edge loops and such, and then doing that detailing. But yeah, and then you're ready to unwrap this, you know, and then put that in Substance Painter, or bring it to ZBrush, do some sculpting or something on there. But there's not much like grooves or anything on this guy, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. But yeah, ooh, we could probably soften that a little bit right there, make that nice soft edge. But yeah, awesome. Thanks for watching, y'all. Again, just do this sort of thing, bring it to class. I want to see some cool props next week. It'll be fantastic. Thanks for watching, y'all.